Sometimes the most helpful recipes are the ones that are using simple ingredients you already have in your home. Today we are making English muffins with simple ingredients that you can find in your pantry. They are soft and full of all of those nooks and crannies the English muffins are famous for, and they are perfect to have with butter and jam or as a breakfast sandwich, and you can freeze them and use them for months. If you're new here, my name is Amy Cross, and this is The Cross Legacy, where I teach you how to save money on groceries. Our grocery budget is $135 per person in our household, and we're just a household of two, my husband and I, so our grocery budget is $270 per month. And sometimes with the grocery budget being that small, I have to make decisions when I'm at the store if something is too expensive and I need to put it back, or if I have the ingredients at home and I can just make it. So one of the ways that I'm really able to save money on groceries is I'm making sure that I'm buying quality ingredients, and I buy them in bulk as much as possible to get the best deal. But these ingredients I can use multiple ways, and to make a quick and easy bread like English muffins is such a great thing to stretch out that grocery budget. Before we get into the recipe, I want to talk about some of the ingredients that I buy in bulk that might help you save money too. So one of the most important things that I make sure that I always have is some active dry yeast. Now I get this in a 2-pound package from Costco, but when I get it home, I divided it up into jars. This larger jar will end up in the freezer, and it will last for many years in the freezer. And then the smaller jar I keep in the refrigerator. And I even have some of my pandemic 2020 sourdough starter in the freezer. So I always make sure I have some type of yeast that I can make bread products at any time. Something else that I buy in bulk once a year is this tub of honey. So we seem to go through this about every 10 to 12 months, and we can use it all the way down. But it was one of those things that I realized that I was buying quite often at the grocery store, and being able just to have it on my yearly budget to know I'm getting it has saved me a lot of money and trips to the store. For this recipe, you don't have to use honey. You can use any kind of sweetener, so you can use regular sugar or maple syrup in it. Something else that I make sure that we always have is milk products in our house. So I normally get the 2-gallon boxes of milk that's at Costco. This is the organic A2 milk, and it comes in 4 half gallons. Since it's just my husband and I here at the house, we don't seem to go through milk very quickly, and this will stay fresh for over 2 months in your refrigerator. In addition to having milk in the refrigerator all of the time, we also make sure that we always have some different varieties of shelf-stable milk down in our pantry. So in case we need to make some bread and need some milk, we always have something on hand. One of the other pantry staples we always have on hand is flour. I just recently made an entire video about that, teaching you how to bring it home and put it into the freezer and then put it into glass jars, so that 18-month expectancy for flour will actually stretch out much longer. All of the other ingredients are just really simple things that you would normally have in your house, like salt, butter, and eggs. And then at the very end of this process, you are going to use some cornmeal or some semolina flour to dust your pan with. This entire recipe with the ingredients and the measurements will be listed in the description, so you don't have to write this down. You can just listen along. The first step of this process is to make sure that we have warm milk and water that we're going to use in the proofing process. Now we want that to be between 105 to 115 degrees. So it means that you can put your finger in it and it will just be warm but not hot. I'm going to do this with a thermometer, and while I'm doing it, I want to make sure that I don't let the thermometer touch the bottom of the pan, because then you can get a false hot reading. I do this on the stovetop in a small pan. You can also do it in the microwave if you have one. I don't happen to have a microwave, so we do it on the stovetop, and then I end up using this pan again to melt some butter, so it works out perfect. Okay, the water and the milk is warmed up. I'm going to put it in this bowl. We're going to add some yeast and then the sweetener of your choice. We are using honey. I have all of the ingredients in the bowl here, and I'm just going to give it a quick stir and then leave it alone for the next 5 to 10 minutes, and it's going to proof the yeast, which makes it activated and all bubbly. So I gave this pan a quick rinse, and the next thing we're going to do is add 3 tablespoons of butter and melt it in the pan. I am just going to mix the flour right into my KitchenAid bowl, but I wanted to talk about how I normally store flour. Currently, right now, I have some flour in a half-gallon jar. This is kind of difficult when you want to measure it out. So normally I keep our flour in gallon-sized jars that have a 4-inch opening, and then the 1 cup measuring cup will fit down inside of it. So if you're just starting to get into glass storage, we have a couple videos talking about my favorite ones. Okay, I mixed the flour and the salt into my mixing bowl, and then we're going to add the egg and the butter into the liquid. So I'm going to end up pouring the liquid into my KitchenAid mixer bowl here. And then for this, you're going to use the flat paddle, not the dough hook. I'm going to put this on the mixer. It will take about 7 or 8 minutes to knead it all the way. If you don't have a mixer, you can hand knead this. But as I'm getting older, I'm finding I don't like to do that as much as I used to because it makes my elbow and my shoulder hurt. And every time I go to use my KitchenAid, it just makes me think of my mother-in-law. She bought this for me for a wedding gift 28 years ago. We washed that original bowl that I had. I'm going to end up putting a little bit of oil in this, and I have clean hands, and I'm just going to spread it around the bowl with my hands and then take the dough and put it in the bowl. And then I have this fabric cover I'm going to put over this. And because my oven is 80 years old, I actually have a proofing oven in my oven. So it's kind of cool that I'll be able to use this. But if you don't have a proofing oven, which most people don't, you can just put your light on in your oven, but don't turn it on. I'm getting ready to pull out the proofed dough out of the oven in my warmer, and I'm wanting to get some of these other supplies together. So I have a bowl here that has a little bit of flour. I'm going to be using just a ring for one of my jars to be cutting the English muffins today, but you want to make sure that you're dipping it in flour in between each cut because it'll be kind of sticky. And then on this cutting board, or you can use a baking sheet, I have a piece of parchment paper. I'm going to lay down a little bit of the cornmeal. So as I'm forming the English muffins, I'm going to put them on this board to rise for about 15 to 30 minutes. I'm also going to be using this glass cutting board instead of using it on my countertop today, but I'm going to put a little bit of flour on here and then put the dough on top. I just plopped the dough here on the cutting board and it has some flour underneath it, and I'm just going to gently kind of push it out a little bit, but I want to try to keep it about 1 inch thick. This recipe I really like because I don't have to use a rolling pin, and I have some elbow and shoulder issues that make that really difficult for me. Okay, I'm going to fold all of this dough back together kind of gently and then make another one. I ended up getting 10 and a half English muffins out of that batch of dough. And if you're using an actual biscuit cutter, it would have cut a little bit easier. But again, I was just using what I have. But for this next step, I want to make sure that these are going to rise. And a lot of people would put plastic wrap over it at this time. I don't really like to use plastic wrap. So I'm going to end up putting a little bit more cornmeal over the top of them and putting another piece of parchment paper over it and then covering that with a cloth. We're going to let this rise another 15 to 30 minutes. And if you don't want to do this all on the morning that you're eating the English muffins, you can actually proof this in the refrigerator overnight and then in the morning divide it into the English muffins. It's been about 30 minutes of these English muffins doing the second rise, and then we are going to get ready to put them on the stove. Now, I really love this recipe because you cook it on the stovetop and you don't have to turn on your oven. I'm going to be using a large skillet that's cast iron and it has a heavy lid on it, but any skillet with a lid will work. You want to turn your stove onto medium and let it heat up for a few minutes until you can feel that heat when you place it near the pan. Don't touch it. And once that starts to get warm, then sprinkle a little bit of the cornmeal into the pan, which will help it not stick, and add 3 to 4 English muffins at a time, however many will fit easily into your skillet. After you get the English muffins into the pan, then lower it down to medium-low and cover it. You want to be watching it around 6 to 8 minutes and make sure that the one side that's cooking is brown. Once you get that toasty brown color on the bottom, then you flip them over and do the other side for another 6 to 8 minutes. Now make sure your pan is not getting too hot. You might have to adjust the temperature a little bit lower. As you're making the English muffins, every time you put a new batch in the pan, you want to make sure that you are adding new cornmeal and taking the old cornmeal out so it doesn't burn in the bottom of the pan. These take about 6 to 8 minutes per side, just depending on how high your stove gets and how hot that pan is. And if you don't have a skillet that has a lid, you can always use a cookie sheet. I know for me, English muffins haven't been in the grocery budget much lately, and I walk by them at the grocery store and kind of eye them and then decide not to get them. But I love that I can easily make these and even set them aside and put them in the freezer so we can have them for many months. Each batch makes about 10 English muffins, just depending on how much your dough has risen and what size cutter you're using. I would make 2 batches, one after the next one, and that way I can cook them all at the same time. If you're new here, welcome. I hope that you hit subscribe and know that I spend time every single day trying to answer all of your questions here on YouTube. I check in at least morning and evening every single day and answer all of your questions and comments. So I'm really here to help, to try to help you save money on groceries.